You're listening to the Nature Talks podcast, a podcast about education and connecting learners of all ages with the outdoors and nature. My name is Kevin O'Shea and I'm your host. I'm an early years educator with a passion for connecting kids and adults with the outdoors. I'm a passionate naturalist who spends as much time as I can exploring nature, learning about plants, birds, and bugs, and then sharing my amazing experiences with others. In each episode of the Nature Talks podcast, we'll have conversations with people making education connections with students and nature. More than any other time in history, we need to be sparking a passion for conservation and sustainability with the young and old alike. And in this podcast, we'll talk to educators, students, scientists, and citizens making a difference in the world today. Sit back and get ready to learn something new and exciting about nature education. Well, hey there, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Nature Talks podcast, a podcast all about environmental education and connecting people with nature. In this episode, I'm really excited to be chatting with my friend James Reynolds, who is an extreme weather videographer, nature content creator, and he's going to be talking to us about the fascinating life he lives, his connections with nature, and about his new series on YouTube called Frontline Nature. It's a fascinating interview. This guy is a really cool, interesting person, and you're really going to enjoy this episode. So sit back and listen to my conversation with James Reynolds all about Frontline Nature and so many other things. Hey, folks, another episode of the Nature Talks podcast is here for you. And in this episode, I've got a fantastic guest, a fantastic interview. I'm going to be chatting with the man behind Frontline Nature, James Reynolds. James, thanks for joining us today.
Kevin, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be chatting with you again. It's been too long.
It has been. Now, James has been a guest on a former podcast I've had. Years ago, I had a podcast called the Just Japan podcast, and that's how we first connected. And we've been Twitter friends ever since, and have been looking forward to, at some point in the future, connecting in person to explore the creepy crawlies and nature of Japan together.
Can't wait. It can't come soon enough, honestly.
Absolutely. So, James, can you tell the Nature Talks podcast listeners a little bit about yourself? A little bit about yourself and what you do.
So, I'm based in Japan with my family. My wife is Japanese. I've got two young boys who are 5 and 7 years old now. And we split our time in Tokyo. And when the kids aren't in school and during the holidays, we spend our time up in beautiful Nagano Prefecture, which, if your listeners aren't familiar with, is one of the largest, most rugged, wild and mountainous prefectures in Japan. And I'm a video producer. I'm freelance, so that gives me a wonderful amount of freedom to spend time where I choose and roam around, travel, look for interesting things, and really just get involved in my passions and interests. So, which evolve over the years, but now I'm really, focused on the video production and just being in nature and trying to enjoy life as much as possible during these challenging times.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's really interesting for me because I'm watching kind of your Japan trajectory over the years through Twitter, through the lens of Twitter, and kind of I've seen I don't want to say an evolution, but more of kind of a change in, when I first met you, you were traveling around the world, getting in front of typhoons and things, doing all those mad things that most people would normally never do, in order for the sake of capturing the video footage and documenting, Mother Nature and her strongest and fiercest, I suppose. But it's been interesting. I want to ask you about your kind of connection to nature in Japan, because I've seen an evolution, I guess, with that. You, I guess not so recently, but in the last few years, kind of have made a move from Tokyo to that more kind of rugged prefecture. Could you tell us a little bit about what sparked your move towards nature?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when I moved to Japan with my wife and family, we were all pretty well set. Life was good, professionally. Wife's got a great job. My business, which I've been running for, 10 years by that point. This was 5 years ago. Was running itself, really. I was very lucky. Business going well. I'm free to do what I want, chase storms, go to volcanoes anywhere in the world. And then 2020 happened and life for everyone got turned upside down on his head. And it was a huge shock to the system. I think there was that initial, 4 months of just what is going on, that time to just process it all. A little bit of denial at first. This will all blow over. I'm sure it's not going to be a big deal. And then the realization, the kind of slow realization that, oh my gosh, this is not going to go away. And it's having a huge impact on my professional life. My entire business, my ability to get out there and shoot content and make a living more or less ground to a complete halt. And that forced me to kind of rethink a lot of things. My wife, she moved to a work from home regime. So this completely changed the way we were both working and the way we were able to work. And it kind of triggered this thing like, right, this might be actually a good opportunity to make a pretty serious life-changing decision. So we went ahead and decided that we're going to look at some houses in the countryside of Japan. It's quite a well-known thing about Japan is that there are these crazy cheap little houses dotted around in the countryside because sadly the countryside is kind of suffering in this country. Big exodus of people to the cities and the economies there are declining. But the flip side of that, there's a lot of cool places, cheap properties. So we kind of took advantage of that and found a beautiful cottage in the woods. I'm talking way in the forest in Nagano Prefecture. And that single decision, which at the time was very, very stressful, are we mad? Should we be doing this? Has turned out to be one of the most life-changing, amazing decisions we ever made, just to have this slice of nature and tranquility, which we can call home. And we haven't looked back since then. And it's really almost changed the direct trajectory of our lives, just that kind of simple move, so to speak. So it's very exciting. And basically using that as a base for the future, this is well, I want to grow old in that environment, I'm a countryside kid at heart.
Yeah.
So it still really excites me, this whole
That's
change.
amazing. I mean, it's stepping back to take just for the listeners out there who may not be familiar with your work or what you did in the, what I'm sure you will be doing in the future, but what you did in the past. If just in a nutshell, could you explain that you're a video content creator? What type of videos were you specializing in pre-COVID?
So I have a pretty unusual niche. I travel around mostly Asia, but also the US, Australia, chasing severe weather. Mostly dealing with tropical cyclones. So we're talking about hurricanes, typhoons, cyclones. Volcanoes also fascinate me. So if there's a big eruption taking place somewhere, I would try and capture that, mostly in Indonesia, Philippines, Hawaii. Actually, the Philippines for a volcano was my last international work trip before the pandemic. So, and obviously since travel in and out of Asia has become very, very difficult, that all basically ground to a halt.
Okay. Yeah.
But I do intend to take off where I left off. Is that the right phrase?
Oh yeah, I totally understand. When the world normalizes, exactly, and we can get on airplanes again, and there are airplanes to go places.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, fantastic. So let's go. I want to take a step back over to Nagano.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the Nature Talks podcast, and we're talking about, the kind of theme is about using nature as an education tool. Now, I want to kind of look at how you've been educating yourself with regards to that nature. Now, I myself grew up in a very small town in Eastern Canada, probably not that different than where your place in Nagano is. So I grew up a very rural life. so that's one of the things why I love watching your content, is because I do definitely wax nostalgic when I see it. It just makes me pine for where I came from. And obviously I live in, I've been living in cities for years. I live in the heart of a gigantic, vibrant city here in China. So I obviously, and I also, it's subtropical. It's near Hong Kong, right? So we don't have that snow. But I can remember like growing up with very active birders as parents. And that's kind of how I started kind of learning about birds. I wasn't a willing participant in birding. I think I was more dragged along and learned through osmosis. But when I moved to Japan back in 2008, I had to, all of my kind of knowledge about birds did me no good. As is when I moved from Japan to here, to Shenzhen, because they're all completely different species. I don't know what, I saw birds everywhere, but I'm like, I don't know what any of this stuff is. So it's interesting that for me, what really jumped out at me when you first moved to Nagano was this kind of a sudden interest. I mean, I wouldn't say sudden. I'm sure you had it all along, but now it was all in your face. This interest in things like birds and wildlife and flora, fauna. So can you tell me a little bit about kind of that little journey of learning about all that amazing nature around you in Nagano?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I'd say I've always had a casual interest in, birds, wildlife, animals, but never like a specific interest. I would never go out of my way to read up, investigate, or kind of, specifically look up, what was that bird I saw on the street of Tokyo? There were other distractions and things going on. But suddenly when you find you've got this space in this beautiful forest, surrounded by nature, which essentially is home, home isn't just within the four walls and under that roof. It's also, around you as well. And I think to really get the most out of such a fabulous environment and to really respect it and to be able to also protect it and look after it, you've really got to know who you're living with, who are the neighbors and the friends in the garden. And that is, of course, the birds. And that was the one thing which struck me when I moved there, was just how vibrant the Japanese forest is. I think even more so than the UK forest, just because I don't know if it's to do with the slightly greater range of the climate, the warmer summers, the colder winters, just sparks more life. And, it just really surprised me because it was my first experience of really being in the Japanese forest and just how wild and amazing it is. I want to learn this as well, so that I've got these two young, malleable minds who I'm nurturing, of course, my children. And of course, the experiences and what you learn as a child, you carry that through for the rest of your life. And that shapes you as a person. It shapes your interests. You're talking about your nostalgia and your kind of pining for the environment you grew up in. It's exactly the same reason why I was so keen to do the Nagano thing, because I grew up in the countryside in a beautiful part of the UK. And it just kind of connects with my soul.
Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of want that to carry on through to my kids, even though they were born in Hong Kong, massive city. Yeah. They go to school in Tokyo, but they have this, wonderland at their disposal, which many kids don't have. So they're very fortunate. They're privileged, my kids, and I want them to make the most of that situation as well. And, pass it on to their friends and kids when the time comes as well. But I feel like you're just missing so much if you don't know what's going on around you when you're in the countryside in nature.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, obviously you're preaching to the choir here. It's just kind of fun because what I've noticed, like this kind of, when I say a little bit of an evolution, is I remember when you first moved there and you would be messaging me on Twitter all the time saying, what's this? What's this? What's this?
I'm so sorry.
Oh, no. I love that. I love that. I love it. That's one of the things I love about my Twitter following is that, I have like educators from around the world who message me and private DM me and are like, Kevin, like, what's this bug? What's this bird? I feel, in a cool way, kind of honored that people think of me when they're like, who should I go to? One of the things I've always loved about nature and the outdoors is the sleuthing aspect. Whereas when I don't know what something is, I can't sleep until I figure out what it is. I'm just on my laptop, I'm on my phone, I'm going through all my books and stuff. Like, what is this?
That's what's so fun about it as well, because your curiosity is always being sparked, and especially in young people and children, that's just essential, to develop an inquisitive mind. I think is just essential for a kid, kids. And there's always something to investigate, to look up. To spark one's interest. It's just impossible to get bored.
Absolutely, right?
It's impossible to get bored.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's just so much to learn about. And, I know soon enough, you will be a naturalist. You'll be the expert up there, and it'll be really cool. I look forward to the day when I can get back to Japan and you can show me around Nagano. I've never been. I've never been to Nagano Prefecture. Wow. I think the only kind of naturey area, like I've been to Gifu a few times, and Gifu was amazing. That was a remarkable place. If there's bears, it's cool. Maybe not cool to see them up in person, but yeah. So so you're a videographer and you're still creating content. And just yesterday, now we've had the conversation. I asked you several weeks ago if you'd be willing to come on the podcast, and you said yes. But it was yesterday when I reached out to you last night because you premiered your latest video from Frontline Nature about the snowiest areas in Japan, and that was just amazing. Again, areas of Japan I've never been to. I've never been to that region of the country. So I was wondering if you could tell the listeners a little bit about Frontline Nature and what that's all about.
Yeah, this is all coming about from being my entire work, my ability to get out there and shoot content being turned on its head by the pandemic, and basically being forced from being in a very comfortable position before the pandemic to rethinking my whole work strategy. And it just came to me literally, I think I was lying in the bath one day and I was just like, why don't I become a YouTuber? Okay. Now, I'm 38 years old. I'm sure there's a lot of people, who would hear a 38-year-old say now and think, oh my gosh, midlife crisis alert. And no, it was just like, why didn't I do this earlier? I got this such a great base to build off of. I've got the niche, shooting crazy nature, storms, eruptions. I've already got a YouTube channel which is doing okay. But the pandemic just has given me this perfect opportunity to just dive into learning these new skills. So I spent the last 6 months binge watching YouTube tutorials, how to shoot cinematic travel blogs, how to use your camera, how to shoot with the iPhone. Probably hundreds of videos. It's been amazing. There's some amazing people out there creating educational content, and obviously in the video space. And this video I just shot 2 weeks ago and released last week, marks the beginning of this very exciting journey. I'm throwing literally everything behind this series now. I want this to define me as a professional. That's how seriously I'm taking it. So whereas before it was all about, getting the shots, selling them, making the money. Now it's very much more about the art, the creativity, and just making something which educates people, makes people go, wow, and also lets them escape their, wherever they are at that time when they're watching my videos. So that's the aim. I'm excited. I'm going to throw a lot of time at it, effort, hard work. And let's see where it goes. Hopefully I'll be able to talk to you in a few years and it's become a success. We'll see.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I watched your latest video yesterday with my wife, and we were both very impressed. And, I have to admit, I'm seeing that progression in your skill set with editing, and the music. Your music choices were great. The editing was great. It's good stuff, man. It was good stuff.
Yeah, there's a distinct style I'm going after. Not everyone's going to like it, but in these challenging times, you either kind of roll over and put your hands up and give up, or you kind of seize the initiative and make the best out of a bad situation. And that's what I'm trying to do right now. If I can come out of this horrible pandemic healthy, obviously, number one, but two, in a place to grow professionally, I think that would be amazing. So, I'm excited. I'm not going to deny it hasn't been tough the last 2 years.
Right.
Watching storms and eruptions going on in places I can't really get to.
Yeah.
So, but you got to see the positives.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, so this podcast obviously is geared towards educators, and the audience are international school teachers around the world, homeroom teachers, around the world, in the UK, in Canada, you name it. So you already mentioned, with regards to, for example, finding your place in Nagano, about utilizing nature as an education tool for your own children and giving them opportunities. So with regards to Frontline Nature, and just kind of what you're doing in general, and you've already kind of mentioned a little bit here and there, but again, I want to take that education angle. How do you see, or what do you see in the future, maybe, is how you'd use your video series or your upcoming feature videos, whatever they may be, to educate old and young?
That's a great question, and I think we can split that into two parts. I think the first one being a lot of these events I'm covering are high impact events. They are major storms which are impacting communities, having long lasting effects. And part of me wants to create a really thorough documentation of these events, so that in the future people can go back and go, hurricane, whatever, what was that like? And then hopefully they might find my video and it will give them a really good sense of what that storm was about, what it was like to go through it, and the effects of it. But secondly, I think educating people through the visual medium, is such an effective way of doing it. So I want to bring people into hurricanes, typhoons. I want to bring them next to an erupting volcano, so they can really get a sense of what it is like. Respect nature, just get a sense of the dangers, the risks, but also the beauty, and just how amazing nature can be as well. Not everything I film is a big disaster, and I film a lot of spectacular, amazing natural phenomena where thankfully no one's getting impacted or hurt, which is good. I mentioned the word art before. I want to bring a little bit of maybe make it into a piece of art as well, which people can just appreciate as well. And I think if you can combine all those together, you got an interesting product which people will be interested in watching. So it's very much a work in motion, but the educational side of it is going to be important. I want people to learn about the harsh environment of Taiwan, and just how those rugged mountains cause cataclysmic floods and the destruction of typhoons and the clashes of these different forces of nature. Kind of things which, most people didn't really know about before. So,
wow. Very cool. Very cool. I mean, also just kind of thinking back to I've been talking about your latest video where you visited the snowiest region of Japan. I also would think of that as a great, the way that video was framed, as a great travel video too. I mean, I bet there's going to be a lot of people who are going to watch that and say, dang, I want to go there, because I know I do. And I showed it to my wife, who's from Osaka. And for those who are familiar with Osaka, there's not very much snow there. It's definitely not a snowy region. She was like, if you want to go there, she jokingly said to me, if you can find an international school in that area, go ahead and let's move there. I love the fact that she's talking like that these days, by the way.
That's cool. That's cool. That really is. But no, absolutely. And that's another part of the educating. I want to bring people to interesting parts of the world which they might not necessarily have thought of before. The far-flung rural regions of the Philippines. It's absolutely beautiful. There's amazing people there. I want viewers to get a sense of what these locations are like when I when I'm on the road filming storms. Actually, and the beauty of this, and if it does take off and is successful, and I'm quite excited about it, is going to give me the excuse to maybe do a bit more of this travel content, go to interesting places, which I've always wanted to go to, and be able to call it work trips. So
Yeah, cool. Exactly. So I'm wondering, with regards to just, the pre-COVID days, and I just want to kind of, because we all have a sense of adventure. We all love watching adventurous things. Pre-COVID days, what were some of kind of maybe a few of your wilder weather experiences as a videographer, a content creator back in the day? Where are some of the more memorable experiences you've had in a nutshell? I'm just curious.
Well, it's 2018 and 2019 were crazy typhoon seasons for Japan. And at the time, it kind of felt normal. It's just it's just a regular season. But now that 2020, 2021 were quite quiet typhoon season, you look back and go, oh my gosh, didn't quite realize at the time just how crazy it was. We had this series of really almost record-breaking, powerful typhoons smashing into Japan across the you must recall the one which I think it was called Jebi, which trashed Osaka and a large area of
Kansai Airport was flooded, right? The whole Kansai Airport was underwater.
I'm sure your wife was very concerned about her family and everything. That was like a real eye-opener, because it had been a while since Japan had really been walloped by major typhoons like that, especially the main islands. A lot of trips down to the Philippines. In 2019, the last typhoon I chased down there, that was a Category 4, really wild, very damaging for the communities down there, sadly. Another Cat 4 that year in one of the islands of Okinawa, which was really crazy. And then suddenly everything kind of ground to a halt when the pandemic started. But yeah, the Philippines especially is a scary place to film typhoons, because that's the kind of place where you'll go down there expecting to film like a weaker typhoon of some sort, and then suddenly it blows up into a monstrous super typhoon overnight, and you're facing this really, really scary storm. So yeah, it's I'm not going to lie, I'm keen to get back out there and into these situations again. It interests me, it fascinates me, but we'll see. We'll see how
yeah. Cool. So, I guess you've already kind of alluded to, the future of Frontline Nature, but while you're kind of locked in Japan for the next whatever period of time, foreseeable future, where do you plan on taking Frontline Nature, the video series?
It's a great question. Right now, I'm going to try and make the most of the rest of winter. It's really my favorite season. And I think when you're generating content, one of the most important things is you got to create content around subjects you're interested in and you love. So just so that passion and interest comes through organically and naturally. So right now, and this might interest you a lot actually, is I'm very keen to get up to Hokkaido to film the sea ice, drift ice, which drifts down from Russia and kind of piles up against the northern coastline of Hokkaido and is a bird watcher's paradise. Yeah. I believe there's all sorts of amazing wildlife up there, but I'm planning to do a road trip from basically the southern tip of Hokkaido all the way up there, and with my drones and cameras, and just record more of like a travel style vlog, but all with the weather connection with the ice and everything. I want to get back to snow country. I got a very silly idea for like a snow measuring challenge video. Go up there when there's a big snow set up and like set up these different measuring stations and see how much actual proper snow I can measure. Yeah. So, wiping it off every 6 hours. And so that could be quite fun. And I also want to do I've got into snowshoeing recently.
Oh, wow. Wonderful.
I'm sure is popular at pastime in Canada. And there's some amazing places in Nagano to do that. So I'd love to just take the viewers up into the beautiful up to about 2,300 meters. So it's quite high.
Wow.
To the forest and frozen lakes in central Nagano as well. So
that's so cool.
That's the plan for now. And then wait for typhoon season.
Yeah. For those of you listening, you definitely have to take the time to follow James on Twitter. His Twitter feed is a lot of fun, a lot of great weather, wildlife, nature, all that cool stuff. So I want to wrap things up. I don't want to keep you much longer, James. Could you let people know, speaking of that Twitter and the YouTube, where can people find you online to watch this content?
Yeah, so I am Earth Uncut TV. So that's all one word on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. That's how you'll find me. And yeah, I'm really, really appreciative of all the support I'm getting for this new venture right now. It's so motivating because, it can be pretty tiring and a lot of hours in the editing suite and shooting and, spending money to get to places. So just getting all the support I've had so far has been absolutely amazing. And it really motivated me to get out there and just shooting these storms and volcanoes in a way which I don't believe they've been shot before and presented to people. So I'm
nice.
Excited about it. So yeah, please feel free to follow, and any questions, I'm always open to answering people's questions, especially if they have concerns about a storm headed somewhere, or So I want to be here to help, just like you've helped me over the years with all my questions,
my bug questions and things.
About things.
Well, that's awesome, and I mean, listeners out there, all these links will be in the show notes. So that's like when you're scrolling through an Apple podcast and you see all the information at the bottom of the podcast. James' links will be there. Go check his stuff out at Earth Uncut TV over on YouTube, on Twitter, and all the wonderful places where content flies around. And James, thanks so much for stopping by the Nature Talks podcast.
Thanks for having me, and look forward to, properly getting together in person soon and going exploring, and we should make a video about it.
Absolutely.
How cool would that be?
Oh, that would be super cool. Now, I want to thank James for taking the time to stop by the Nature Talks podcast. It was really fantastic to catch up with him, find out about the very cool things he's doing, and I hope that you're all inspired a little bit more by listening to his story. Now, of course, you can find out all of James' contacts in the show notes for this episode. And of course, you can find me on Twitter at MadForMaple. Come on over and follow me. Join the conversation about environmental education. Also, you can find me around the Nature Talks podcast Facebook group. The Facebook group is a great place to meet, build community, share ideas, and talk about environmental education, sustainability, biodiversity, all of those really important topics. So again, there's going to be links to that in the show notes. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Shizen Wildlife. Shizen Wildlife. That means nature wildlife. Shizen is a Japanese word for nature. Yeah, and that's it. That's where you can find me. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Nature Talks podcast. You can help us grow, of course, by giving us a rating, a review in whatever podcatcher app you're using to listen to this episode. And of course, please share this podcast with your educator friends, your colleagues. Help us grow. Share us on any Facebook groups you might be a member of. Share us on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever it may be. And we'll keep bringing awesome content your way. So again, that's it for another episode of the Nature Talks podcast. My name's Kevin O'Shea, Canadian educator living and working in China. And thanks for tuning in. We'll be back again very soon with another fascinating guest, another episode of this podcast. So wherever you are in the world, folks, I hope you're happy. I hope you're healthy, and be safe.